Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Chad. I'm the senior keeper of birds and herpetofauna here at Adelaide Zoo. And this afternoon, I'm going to be introducing you to our Australian pelicans, just like my mate Zeus here, and the other 6 that call Adelaide Zoo home. So here at Adelaide Zoo, like I said, we're home to 7 of these Australian pelicans. And Australian pelicans are actually the largest pelican species in the world. So there's pelicans found in most parts of the world, but in Australia they're the biggest they get anywhere. However, when you look at these birds, they look really large, but they actually don't weigh very much. So my mate Zeus next to me here, he's actually our biggest pelican. He looks quite large, but he actually only weighs 8 kilograms. That's the heaviest a pelican will ever get. So 8 kilos really isn't that heavy when you compare it to mammals of a similar size. And that's because pelicans, being a bird, they have hollow bones, and they also don't have any teeth. And so that helps keep them really light. So most of the bulk in his body there is actually just feathers, making him look a lot bigger than he actually is. Now, pelicans are found pretty well in any waterway in Australia. Rivers, down by the oceans, lakes, dams, places like that. And they're quite a common bird for us to grow up with here in Australia. In fact, most of us grow up around pelicans. However, not many people have ever seen a baby pelican. And that's because pelicans, well, they breed in areas well away from where we can get to. So they either breed on offshore islands or they breed on large inland lakes, just like Lake Eyre when it fills up. And so they don't tend to be seen when they're little. And for these birds to fly, they have to be fully grown. So believe it or not, my mate Zeus here was this size at only 3 months of age. So they grow really, really fast. Now what that means is the age can't really be, you can't tell the age of a pelican, by looking at it. You have to basically know when it hatched. So a great example of that is actually by size, our smallest pelican in here is actually our oldest. Now her name's Willow. Willow's in the corner of the pond over there, and Willow is actually at least 40, she just caught the fish there. Willow is at least 43 years old. Now we don't know exactly how old she is, and that's because she came into human care as an adult bird. She lived at another organisation here in South Australia which closed its doors in 1986, and she came here to live with us when that facility closed. So she's been here in our penguin group since pelicans, since 1986, and she's still in very good shape considering her age. In fact, in human care, pelicans can live into their 50s, potentially even older. So even though she's 43 years old, she's still going very strong. In saying that, because she is an older bird, we do keep an eye on her, and every day she also gets a little bit of anti-inflammatories, because like you and I, she's sore, so we just make sure that she's nice and comfortable, and she gets assessed every single year, just like all of our animals that are getting older here at Adelaide Zoo. So Australian pelicans are pretty successful out there in the wild, but they still face significant challenges. And probably the main challenges for Australian pelicans are unfortunately to do with people. So that's things like running out of fish to eat because fisheries are reducing, or getting tangled in fishing lines, fishing nets, and just general pollution. So what I'd ask people to do is, if you want to look out for pelicans, the best thing that you can do is, if you're down by the seaside, down by the ocean, or even rivers and lakes, be responsible when it comes time to disposing of your rubbish. Making sure that you put your rubbish in a bin or a recycling bin means it doesn't end up in our waterways, and then it doesn't end up around a pelican. In fact, 2 of our pelicans that live here with us at Adelaide Zoo came into care because they had injuries caused by debris left behind by people, and they're unable to be released back to the wild. And so that's a great way that you can help out just for pelicans and lots of other sea creatures as well. But also by supporting organisations just like Zoo South Australia, as a not-for-profit conservation organisation, any support that we get goes into the work that we do, and that includes looking after animals that come in through our wildlife hospital, just like those 2 Australian pelicans that now full-time call our zoo home.
Right, Chad, we're getting a lot of questions.
Oh, fantastic.
Kylan, age 9, would like to know, do pelicans sleep on the water?
That's a very good question. They don't. So they roost up on the land. And so for our pelicans here at the zoo, their favourite roosting spots are the rocks around the pond, or up in the long grasses up behind me over here. So our exhibit here at the zoo is right next to the central lawns. I'm sure some of you are very familiar with it. But there's a lot of these animals' home area which isn't viewable from the front because it's so densely planted. We've got this really lovely marsh area behind us here where the pelicans love to spend the night up in there. It gives them lots of cover and so they can sleep nice and safe. It's a great question. Thank you for that.
Tracy wants to know, why do they make that noise?
Why do they make that noise? That's like an excited pelican noise. So when it comes time to feeding time, they get very, very excited. Zeus, who was up here next to me as well, who's very comfortable around people, he was actually, unfortunately his story was that he was being held as a pet by somebody who wasn't meant to be keeping him as a pet in the Northern Territory. But for that reason, he associates lots of things with people. And so he makes a very excited noise whenever we come in here with fish because he's just excited to hang out with us. So he enjoys that. So basically, every time you hear that noise, it's kind of an excited pelican noise.
So lots of people asking, where do pelicans lay their eggs?
Well, it's a great question. So here in South Australia, there's two main areas. There's an island off the coast of Outer Harbour, which is colloquially referred to as Bird Island. So it's a great place for pelicans to breed because it's well away from land-based predators and from people and there's also an island down in the Coorong, so down south near Goolwa, where these pelicans breed and lay their eggs. But also those large inland lakes. So every time Lake Eyre fills up, there are thousands of pelicans that go from all across Australia next to that lake and they lay their eggs there, and they think it's because, well, it's safe from predators. There's no predators based there, so they can raise their young in isolation, make sure those youngsters are nice and safe, and then they've got a great chance of survival.
How many eggs do they lay?
They tend to lay 2 to 3 eggs at a time, and that's like most animals, or like most birds. They'll lay multiple eggs, kind of like an insurance policy. So in case one of them doesn't survive, they've got other chicks there. However, when times are good, they'll definitely raise all 3 youngsters. So 2 to 3 is an average clutch size for an Australian pelican.
Okay. Now, lots of people obviously know about the film Storm Boy.
Yes.
Can you identify the pelicans from Storm Boy?
I certainly can. So we've got 2 of them that live with us here at Adelaide Zoo. Salty, who played Mr. Percival. Salty's the one in the middle of these 3 here. So he was Mr. Percival through most of the movie. And then to the left of Salty, just here, who just picked up the fish, that's Sky. Sky rotated through the other 2 adult pelican roles. So both of those birds were featured in that film and then came to live with us once filming completed. And that was filmed right here in South Australia, actually. So those 2 birds have fit into life here in our group really nicely, and they tend to hang around with Zeus. The 3 of them are around exactly the same age, and so they tend to always be together as this little cohort of young, essentially teenage pelicans.
Now, Janine's asked, she says she's heard that pelicans can eat small dogs. Is this true?
I would be incredibly surprised if that occurred. Pelicans are very good predators, and they do have very, very large bills, as you can see. However, they're also very smart, and they know that fish is their favourite food. So I would be very surprised if one of them ate a small dog. It would have to be very small. In saying that, these birds could swallow like a full-size mullet fish in one go.
Because lots of people are saying, do they only eat fish?
Technically, yes. However, if you've been around parks and city areas, you'll know that pelicans occasionally snack on other things that we bring to the park. It's not ideal. Their main diet is fish, and that's really what their digestive system is built to eat. So for these birds, fish is definitely the main diet that they naturally eat. However, like all good animals, they tend to be opportunistic at times, and if food becomes apparent in their environment, they're certainly not going to stray away from trying it. However, they tend to stick to fish.
Do the pelicans have individual markings? Lisa would like to know.
So all pelicans certainly, like if you spend time with them, they start to look different to each other. However, they have a similar sort of pattern across all birds. So it's not like macaws, for example, where they have an individual feather pattern on their cheek, which is similar to our fingerprint. They don't have that level of difference between them. For us here at the zoo to tell them apart, we've got a few different ways. Number one, we work with these birds every day, so their personalities are all different, so we know who's who pretty quickly. Size difference is a big one for pelicans. The males are about 8 kilos at full size, whereas if the females tend to stay at around 5 kilos. So they're a fair bit smaller, so we can tell the genders apart very quickly. But to tell individuals apart here at the zoo, we also have leg bands, which are around the bird's legs, and they essentially act like a name badge on a person. So each bird has a different combination of colours, and that's how we tell who's who. So like Salty, who you're looking at there, who's preening his feathers at the moment, he has got a red and white leg band on the same leg, and so that's how we know that that's Salty. Zeus, who was up here with me before, he's got a black leg band on each leg, and so that's how we know him. Poseidon, who's grooming his feathers, preening his feathers over on the right hand side in the sun there, he's got a grey left leg band, so we know all of them by just looking at those colours.
Very good. So lots of people, I know you said you can't tell the difference really with a baby pelican, but have you ever had baby pelicans here?
We certainly have. So pelicans have bred here at Adelaide Zoo. It's one of actually the few places in Australia where they've been successfully bred in human care, but we don't go out of our way to try and do that. And one of the reasons for that is, like I was saying earlier, about these birds getting tangled in marine pollution. Unfortunately, it happens enough that we need to make sure we've got homes available for birds that might need them if they come into our hospital. So most pelicans in zoos around Australia are in those places because of injuries that meant they were unreleasable, and so we tend to keep places free as much as possible. If we have bred them in the past, it's been for a specific purpose. So one bird that was actually bred here before I worked here at Adelaide Zoo, I worked with at another organisation. So we've certainly had birds born here at hatched here, at Adelaide Zoo, and have gone to other locations. And that's mainly because of this big marshy area behind us up here. They can feel really nice and isolated in that area there. And there's lots of little islands formed by those lamandra bushes in that marsh area, and so they tend to breed in those spots there.
And do they go to sleep at the back up there?
That's where they tend to spend the night. However, a few of our younger pelicans tend to sleep on the rocks around the pond as well.
Do they ever go into the trees? People want to know.
No, they don't. So pelicans are quite heavy. So even though they're only 8 kilos at their heaviest, that's very heavy for a bird, and so it has to be a very solid tree or perch for them to sit on. So they don't tend to do that. Most pelicans tend to roost at ground.
Do they ever bite you, Chad?
If I was to put myself in the situation that they'd have a nibble, then yes, but that would be me putting myself in a situation where that occurs. So with these pelicans, they never go out of their way to come and have a nibble. It would be me hanging around a pelican with a bucket of fish and not passing a fish over quick enough, or not paying attention to what the behaviour is actually showing us. So if that ever occurs, that's certainly my fault rather than the pelicans choosing to come up and have a nibble.
Okay, well there's so many questions coming in. Everyone loves these pelicans.
Fantastic. Pelicans are great. We love pelicans here at the zoo.
And they're loving your chat, Chad. Henry age 9 would like to know, are pelicans in other countries?
Yes, so pelicans are found all around the world. These ones are called Australian pelicans. However, and like the name suggests, they're also found in other countries. So Australian pelicans are found occasionally in New Zealand. They're also found up through Southeast Asia as well. But then there are other species of pelican found all around the world. So in the United States, for example, there's a pelican called a brown pelican, which, as the name suggests, is brown all over. In southern Europe and in Africa, there's a bird called a Dalmatian pelican, which is just slightly smaller than these birds here, but they're white all over. So there's pelicans found all around the world. There's 7 species actually. However, the Australian pelican is the biggest. Great question.
Yeah, okay. Now lots of people are asking why they're not flying away.
Good question. So for the 3 younger birds, their wings are clipped, and that's a non-permanent procedure. So in the same way that if you might have a bird at home, and if you get it done properly, you're just taking off the edge of some of the feathers on one wing, and that way it's not a permanent job that we're doing. We have to redo it every year, but also it means that they continue to have use of those wings. The older pelicans all have injuries that mean that they can't fly, and so they can't be released back to the wild, and so that's why the older pelicans don't fly away. In saying that, you'll see with the pelicans this afternoon, they were having a bit of a flap around, and they're moving around. They're enjoying themselves here. If they really wanted to get out of this environment, we'd see them showing that sort of behaviour. In here, this is security for them, so they know they've got food here, they've got shelter, and it's actually a really interesting thing if one of these pelicans goes to the other side of the fence. Now, that happened the other day. We took Zeus for a walk. So Zeus, who was up here next to me on the jetty, Zeus, for a little bit of enrichment, we decided we'd take him out for a little bit of a walk outside of the enclosure, and he walked out the gate, got outside the gate, and then froze still as a statue because he was in a location that he wasn't familiar with. Even though he sees it all the time, for him it was slightly different. And so for these birds here, this is where they feel comfortable, and so this is home basically.
So quite a few people saying with the wing situation that they're actually self-isolating, so
well,
that's a good thing to be doing.
They are showing us exactly what we should be doing as well.
Yeah, and one of our super fans, Drew, asked yesterday that we put up a reminder on Facebook so that she wouldn't miss the Facebook Live, and I've seen she's here and she's watching with her cat.
Fantastic.
So I don't know what the cat makes of...
Glad you made it.
Yeah.
I hope you're both enjoying the pelicans. You may also notice our pelicans now. So, for example, Salty, who's next to us here, is shaking his wings slightly. So birds have got really fast metabolisms. So for those of you out there who don't know what I mean by metabolism, that's meaning the factory in our body that turns our food into energy. So birds' metabolism is really fast. And so when they eat, they actually get really quite warm. And so pelicans, and all birds in fact, tend to need to cool down after eating. And birds actually shiver to cool down, so the opposite to you and I. So when you see a pelican or even a penguin shivering after a feed, they're trying to run cool air over their wings where the blood vessels are shallowest, and then it passes cool blood around their body. It's a really important part of maintaining their body temperature.
Loads more questions coming in. We're also getting some feedback. Someone said, when are you going to do a Facebook Live on macaws? That was from Alina. Are they in fresh or salt water?
Here they're in fresh water. They can live in both. So like most birds that live around the ocean, these birds have got a salt excretion gland, so they can drink salt water. Our birds live in fresh water, but there's no real difference for a pelican between living in fresh or salt water. And one of the reasons for that is their eyes. They don't stick their eyes underwater very often. So the real animals that need to live in salt water are generally an animal that lives by the ocean but that tends to spend a lot of its time underwater. So a great example of that is our sea lions. Our sea lions, which they live in salt water in the wild and they spend a lot of time underwater. So for their eye health, we add salt to the water there so that they've got nice salt water to swim in. For our pelicans, it's just fresh water.
Okay. Grace, who's age 4, would like to know, how do they swallow?
How do they swallow? Well, it's the same way as you and I. The only difference is because they've got no teeth, they have to do two things. Number one, they have to make sure that the food that they've got isn't too big. However, they can swallow some pretty big food, but the main thing that they need to do is they need to make sure that the fish that they're swallowing is going down head first. So on a fish, if you have a look at a fish's back, they've got a fin that runs the whole way up and down the back, and they've got spines on there. Now, if a pelican or a penguin or a sea lion swallows that fish tail first, all those spines and scales would stick up and it would get stuck in their throat, which wouldn't be very nice. So for them, they always need to make sure that the fish is head first when they swallow it. Now, when you have a look at our pelicans, a lot of people see the hook on the end of the bill and they think that's how they catch the fish. That's not how they catch the fish. That's there so that they can position the fish to be head first. So what they do is they catch the fish in their bill, and then they throw it forward to that hook and hold onto the fish with the hook and dip their head down. And because of the way a fish is weighted, the fish automatically turns the right way so that it's head first when they swallow, and then they throw the fish back and swallow it. So that's how they swallow their fish. Very good question.
Now, Chad, there's lots of people watching, but there's a whole kindergarten in Prospect watching, so I think you should give them a special wave.
Well, hello to that kindergarten out in Prospect. I hope you're enjoying watching our pelicans today. We certainly enjoy bringing the zoo to you all out there, because we love well, we're here every day looking after our animals, so we like being able to share them with you all still.
Kelsey says, how much water can they hold in their mouth?
It can be up to 9 litres, which is quite a lot. So you and I are meant to drink 2 to 3 litres of water a day. They can hold 9 litres of water in their bill at a single time. So that's a lot of water. However, at that point, their bill would be really full. So most of the time, if they're fishing out there in the wild, they get just enough water in that they can catch the fish, and then you'll see them hold their beak just slightly open, and it strains the water out. So if you're at home and you're using something like a colander to sieve the water out of your lettuce while you're washing it, they do the same thing, but they sieve the water out of their fish, and then they can swallow the fish.
Great. We've got Anne Logan watching. She's another super fan.
Hello out there, Anne. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying all our live chats with our animals here at the zoo.
Lots of people saying they can't wait to come back to visit once this COVID-19 restrictions are lifted.
We can't wait to have you back. I will say it's a slightly weird thing to work in a zoo without any lovely visitors to share our animals with. So we can't wait to have you back once we're able to welcome people back to the zoo.
Okay, well, thank you, Chad. Very informative video. I'll just leave it to you to say goodbye to everyone.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. Like I was saying earlier, as a not-for-profit conservation charity, all of your support means the world, and the fact that you're tuning in to still see our animals and hear about them while we're unable to welcome people in here in person means a lot. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.